All right, welcome everybody. Sorry for the delay there. A little bit of technical difficulties on our end. Uh, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Balazar. I'm on the support side here at Cloud Storage Security. And every month we do an overview of the top malware threats that we found the previous month through our solution and through our threat lab, Casmer Labs. Today, we're going to be covering the top malware threats of February 2025. Um, Now, for today, we'll cover a few different areas. The first being the threats themselves. We'll talk a little bit about what each threat is. The top three for this month are the first one, Prometi, I believe is how you say it, Prometi, and that is a botnet specific type of malware that works off of vulnerability that exists on the Microsoft side. Um, we also have Remco's rat, which is a info stealer and rat type of malware that's distributed through phishing campaigns. And then a familiar one that we also covered last month is Mirai, which is a botnet framework or piece of malware that focuses on DDoS attacks and targets Internet of Things devices. So we'll cover those pieces of malware. We'll also go ahead and we'll also take a look at the samples that we have of each piece of malware as well. And we'll detonate it as well and see what this malware does in the background and what it's all about. Real quick, we also want to talk about in our findings what the latest infected file types have been. So far, it has been fairly similar to last month as well. At the top are ELF and exe files, which are executable files. ELF focuses on the Linux side, and exe files focus on the Windows side. Uh, Close to that as well, we have shell scripts, which were also found to be infected. And then two interesting ones, zip files. It's not necessarily the zip file itself, but it's files inside of the zip archive that were found to be infected. And then we have a new contender this month, APK files, which are Android specific, and they are used to install software on Android phones. So it's a little bit of an interesting switch up this month in the list, even though still very consistent. Um, Now, let's go ahead and talk about the first piece of malware that we have. And I'm going to continue to mispronounce this this name. Prometi is what I'll call it for today. But Prometi is a botnet, and it is focused on specifically cryptocurrency. So being used to mine, specifically Monero, using the resources of infected machines. From our findings and from our research, it's interesting that it's still proliferating and out there 5 years on. It was discovered originally in 2020, and it's not only focused on mining crypto, mining Monero, but it's also sophisticated enough to focus on credential theft. So we covered a little bit of this last month where we talked about some pieces of malware that focus on hijacking your text fields that you're entering and that you're filling out, the text inside of those text fields, as well as anything that you copy and attempt to paste. It's hijacking your clipboard as well. And not only that, but a lot of these pieces of malware can not only steal what you've copied, for example, a password that you might use for a crypto wallet, but they can also change what you've copied to something else. So last month we also covered a piece of malware that was able to not only use what was on your clipboard, but was also able to change it from one crypto wallet address to another, being the attacker's own address. Um, Prometi, from what we found, mainly focuses though on stealing credentials. And it's also sophisticated enough to move across networks, so it propagates across a network. So that's pretty interesting. The specific vulnerability that it utilizes is Eternal Blue, which is a Microsoft vulnerability, but it can also spread through things like phishing emails, removable media like USB drives or external hard drives, as well as just Trojan software, like cracked software that you might download and think is clean, but it's actually not. Uh, we also have Remco's rat, which is an interesting one. I found this pretty interesting, and it kind of reminds me of the whole democratization of malware that we talked about in the past, where you have this legitimate remote administration tool that is out there or was out there called Remcos, and attackers were able to take the Remcos tool and turn it into a rat, turn it into a malicious piece of software that just proliferates and is used for stealing data, stealing secrets, stealing passwords, whatever it may be, and even worse, remotely controlling a device it infects. So Remcos is an interesting one that we found because of this, and not only can it steal data, but it can also manipulate files and do things like take screenshots technically, because since it's a remote administration based type piece of malware, it has those capabilities. A lot of the ways that it spreads are fairly traditional. So, malicious links in emails. Again, the cracked software is big. Trojanized software, key generators, or even just updates that are fake that you think are real, are big ways for this malware to spread. And then another piece that we found on Remco's rat is USB propagation. So infected drives or infected external hard drives are able to propagate the software from machine to machine. So it goes to show you never know what you're plugging in at the end of the day. And finally, last but not least, we have Mirai. Now, this is one that we covered last month as well. Still going strong, still very much out there. Mirai is a botnet focused piece of malware. So, and it's focused on Internet of Things devices. So it proliferates out to IoT devices, usually ones that are either no longer updated or have been deprecated. And it's things like DVRs, IP cams, routers, and it just proliferates out there and takes hold of these devices. And once it gets a huge number of devices under its control, all of those devices can be used for DDoS attacks, for example. So Mirai is very much out there. It usually does spread through IoT devices. Um, Another thing to remember is a lot of these IoT devices have default credentials. So, admin username, admin password, or root, and 1234 being the password is an easy way for this type of software to get out there and exploit IoT devices, especially ones that you probably don't keep up to date as often as, let's say, your main computer that you use. So, those were the 3 pieces of malware, that we have for today. Let's go ahead and let's detonate this malware. So, what we're going to do on our side is we have some samples of this malware, that we found, and we'll be able to take a look and see what it does. Let me pull up here a couple things on my side. All right. So, real quick, let's start with Mirai. We have some examples here of the Mirai software. In this case, one of them was found to be clean. Um, let's take a look at this other one, also clean, which is crazy. You can kind of tell it's it's probably using some type of obfuscation or hiding in some way from the scanning engine. So it's strange that these were found to be clean, but they're certainly infected. We also have another example of Prometi as well. In this case, this one was found to be infected. As you can see here, it was in this case an ELF file, so Linux focused, and it found it to be a Linux-based Trojan here. Now, what we can do is we can go to our solution, our antivirus for Amazon S3 solution, and we have our files inside of Bucket here. What we can do, and I'll go ahead and just refresh this page. Oh no. Let me just grab that password. Uh, Always during a live demo, these types of things happen. And we'll go ahead and sign in. All right, perfect. So as you can see here, we're logged into our solution. We have some samples that we've scanned. I'll just go ahead and switch this over to all time. And let's take a look at some of these scans here. So we'll start with Prometi on our side. It looks like each engine treats it differently. In this case, our CSS Premium engine was able to find it, but ClamAV and Sophos were not able to, which is a great example of why you want to use multiple scanning engines as you're scanning your software. In order to increase the efficacy of your scan, you'll need to increase the efficacy, or excuse me, you'll need to increase the number of scanning engines that you're using. And not every single engine is going to be able to find every single piece of malware at the end of the day. This is because different engines have different virus signatures and different ways of scanning files. So the more you use, the better. And the three we have at the moment are allowing you the ability to maximize that efficacy of your scan. So our CSS Premium engine was able to find it in this case. Let's go ahead and let's run a static analysis on it here. And let's take a look at that static analysis. It looks like what happened here is it's giving us a reputation score. It's rating it as malware in this case. It's also giving us a virus total report, which allows us to just get an idea of how other engines treat this particular file. And as you can see, not all engines out there are going to find it to be infected. Some will, but others won't. In our case, we're lucky that we have multiple scanning engines running. Additionally, what we can do is we can run a dynamic analysis on the file as well. And this dynamic analysis will give us a view of what the file is all about. So it will send the file off to a piece of Sophos's Cloud Sandbox that we have. It will scan it and detonate it, meaning execute it fully line by line on the Cloud Sandbox. It will even run a secondary antivirus scan on the Sandbox side as well. And it will show you here, in this case, that secondary scan also came back as infected. It will give you an overview of the different IP addresses it's trying to connect to. In this case, probably some pretty interesting results we can get here if we were to search these IP addresses. Just for the time being, I'll leave those alone. But certainly a great way to see what it's trying to do. Usually through this functionality, we will also receive an activity tree, but it doesn't look like we received one in this case, which is okay. Which is okay in our case for today. What we can actually do is we can take a look at another piece of malware that we have. For example, the Remcos rat malware. And as you can see, thankfully, this one was caught by all three of our scanning engines in this case. It looks like this piece of malware was located in an exe file, and each engine has a little bit of a different identity for this particular finding. Again, we can run a static analysis, a dynamic analysis. This will take a little bit of time, usually 30 to 60 seconds on a static analysis and a little bit longer on a dynamic analysis. In the meantime, though, what we can also do while we wait for that, and here's another one. Let's run the dynamic analysis on this one while we're waiting. But what we can do, let's actually take a look. Yeah, same deal, same engines found it to be infected. What we can do though is let's find Mirai real quick. We have a few other samples of Mirai um, in a few different file formats. In this case, one is an ELF file, which is interesting because uh, Linux, it sounds like, it seems like I should say, a lot of these infected files are targeting Linux. So that's concerning, but also kind of cool because it's, it's not just Windows at the end of the day. In this case, it looks like ClamAV was able to identify Mirai. We'll go ahead and we'll just show our static analysis on this file. Looks like, yep, reputation score is 18. We have even a virus total report, which if I share here, we can see all of the different engines that are finding this particular file to be infected. If we go ahead and we show our dynamic analysis on another Mirai finding, we can see a little bit more information about the file. It'll give us, again, information on what was detected, the IP addresses the file is trying to connect to. In this case, this is a lot of IPs, which is interesting. And it looks like it's even trying to connect to some Microsoft ones as well. So, with this particular finding being related to a botnet, being related to such a complicated level of malicious software, this is to be expected at the end of the day. So many different IPs, since networking and just the communication between this file and all of the different devices that this particular botnet controls back to the command and control server is going to take a lot of networking and probably a lot of infrastructure that somehow they're running. Um, so that's Mirai in a nutshell there. Let's go ahead and take a look at our Remcos finding up here. Oh, where is it? There it is. So there's one. It looks like it's still analyzing the file. I think we should have another one. I'll just refresh. We're doing this live here, folks, so you won't get it 100% perfect all of the time. There we go. So there's our static analysis on our Remcos finding. As you can see in this case, wow. So all three engines were able to find this Remcos malware to be infected. And in this case, Virus Total found it to be quite a few engines finding this file to be infected, as you can see. So most of these, thankfully, are able to find the Remcos piece of malware to be, or excuse me, Remcos rat piece of malware to be infected, which is good. And again, the reputation score is shown there. If we find our other Remcos file here, we might need to wait a few minutes here. Um, yeah, might not have run that dynamic analysis fully yet, but in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that. I do want to talk a little bit about on our side one other actually finding, and I'll leave the Remcos rat piece of malware at that. But one other interesting finding, kind of a runner up for this last month of February 2025, is the form book malware that we found on our side. Now, this was found to be a little bit less in terms of quantity on our side and in our research, but it was still significant enough that I think it deserves a little bit of recognition. Um, in this case, as you can see here, we have scanned this form book file. again, an EML file, and each engine is treating it a little bit differently. So you'll want to make sure that when you're scanning, you're scanning with as many engines as possible. But Formbook is another interesting just piece of malware, interesting identity that we came across. So with all of that said, I'm just going to go ahead and close this one out for today. We covered quite a bit of information on the malware side. Um, we're doing this every single month where we will cover the top findings of the previous month from our scanning as well as research through Casmer Labs. And from our side, let me just talk a little bit about what cloud storage security does and how we can help in your fight against malware and your fight against viruses. We scan data as it's uploaded to whatever storage volume you're using in the cloud. So whether it's on the Amazon side, if you're using S3, EBS, EFS, FSX, or on the Azure and GCP side, we're able to scan data in any of these cloud services that you see here. And you can deploy us entirely within your environment, so the scanning happens on your AWS account. It doesn't leave your AWS account in order for a scan to be performed. And we have absolutely no access to your data as well. So it's a great way to scan all of your different files and prevent any downstream risk of those files ending up on your employees' machines, on your partners, customers, users' machines, so on and so forth. So it's very, very important, just like you would scan your desktop or laptop for malware and viruses. You should scan all of the data you're ingesting into your storage services in the cloud at the source as well. If you're interested in learning more, we do have a 30-day free trial on AWS Marketplace. You can also reach out to us directly if you have any questions. And that's it for today, everybody. We will cover next month the next round of malware for March 2025, the top 3 pieces of malware that we found in March 2025. So be sure to check back then. And yeah, that's it for today. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time, and take care.